Thank you, Chair. Last summer, London has faced 40 degrees heat in our city. We faced flooding and we faced drought. The climate emergency is not a future event, it's all around us today. It's for that reason I declared a climate emergency, making London the first global city in the world to do so. With that announcement came an understanding that we had to do more and urgently. That's why I moved my net zero target from 2050 to 2030 and established a pathway to achieve that. As a result of the work, we know the challenge we need to meet is considerable. We need to retrofit over 210,000 homes each year and install 2.2 million heat pumps by 2030. We need to increase levels of walking, cycling and public transport use. We need to make our city more resilient to the impacts of our changing climate by adaptations. I'm using the limited powers and resources I have to deliver as much of the pathway as I can. We've made progress. In 2021, my London Plan policies resulted in nearly a 50% reduction in emissions from proposed new developments when compared to the national building regulations. Since 2019, my London Plan policies have so far provided for 38,400 new homes to be served by heat pumps. Since 2018, my Energy Efficiency Fund has mobilised over £330 million of funding for net zero projects. At the GLA itself, we've reduced carbon emissions by 79% since 2016. The ultra-low emission zone, opposed by the Conservatives from the start, has not only reduced nitrogen dioxide pollution by nearly half in central London, it's also reduced CO2 emissions from road transport in the central zone by 6% compared to if the zone wasn't in place. The plan to expand it next August will achieve more. However, the powers I have only deliver around a third of the reductions we need. We require action that includes powers and resources devolved to us from the government.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to acknowledge among that list of achievements climate budgeting in London now. This is excellent. We only have 7 more climate budgets, though, until 2030, your target for net zero. Among your list of achievements, I noticed you didn't mention aviation in your climate pathway, and that's one of the places where actually emissions are slowly increasing. In fact, there'll be quite a rapid increase by 2050. How can we reduce aviation emissions in London when airports like City Airport are looking to expand?
Well, I had a really good meeting recently, a conversation with the Chief Executive of Heathrow in relation to the progress in relation to sustainable aviation fuel, which is potentially really exciting. And the technology being worked on, I think the first really exciting aeroplane will fly next year. In relation to City Airport, I'm quite clear. There shouldn't be an expansion of City Airport. I'm not where the Greens are in relation to closing down airports, but I think we need to look at how we can reduce the carbon emissions from aviation.
I'm really proud that Greens want to shut down airports. I think that's a distinct difference between the Green Party and the Labour Party. We recognise this is a climate emergency and that needs to happen. On sustainable aviation fuel, this does worry me also. It reminds me a little bit of the last time we spoke about aviation. You showed support for the US and UK governments' response to aviation, which is Jet Zero. Now, we know a lot of that technology won't even exist by 2030. So when are you going to take responsibility for this and actually set a target in London to reduce aviation emissions?
Well, firstly, can I be clear? I am not in favour of closing airports.
You've made that very clear.
No doubt at all that you know, we're not. And I say that knowing that my uncle and auntie are here from Pakistan, who otherwise it would have taken them 6 months to get here by ship. So I'm pleased they're here to visit my mum. But the key thing is this: we have got the most, according to independent experts from around the globe, the most ambitious targets to get to net zero around the world. We've set a pathway between now and 2030, but I've said in answer to the first question that you asked, we only have a third of the powers in relation to those emissions. The other 2/3 are the responsibility of the government. And rather than driving a wedge, as he's determined to do between him and I thought he'd want to work with me to lobby the government around the other 2/3.
Absolutely work with you to lobby the government on those 2/3, but on those thirds, we have Scope 3 emissions. Now, your own plan with TfL shows that that's around taking off and landing with aviation. So I repeat the same question to you, Mr. Mayor. When will you set a target for reducing aviation emissions in London?
Well, he'll be aware that aviation is not in the gift of the Mayor. Aviation is
it's in your own plan. Scope 3 emissions, take off and landing.
Well, if the member can show me the powers I've got to reduce the number of flights at City and London, and clearly, you know, Gatwick and Stansted affect us, I'm more than happy to, you know, be educated by him and to be shown where we can do so. Look, what we can do is the megaphone stuff in relation to this issue. We can constructively work to make progress where we can in relation to carbon emissions, in relation to air quality, and in relation to congestion. I appreciate it works well with a vocal minority to go into this issue, but it's not conducive to a policy.
This isn't about minority, Mr. Mayor. This is about your own figures in your climate pathway, which show aviation emissions rising.
It's a situation
that's not going to work for net zero by 2030.
We're going to get to net zero carbon, and we're using all the tools in the City Hall toolkit to get there.
Sounds like the Mayor's out of ideas on this, but I hope you'll relook at your climate pathway.
It sounds like you're out of time, Assembly Polanski.